to Corner to Corner podcast. My name's Jeff, and my co-host and very good friend over there is Paul. Evening.
Evening, Mr. Jeff. How are you?
Yes, I'm good, thanks. You all
Good.
right?
Yeah, I'm not bad.
Good.
Yeah.
So, if you've listened to us before, this is information that you don't need to hear again. But if you're new to us, hello, welcome. We're a weekly
Hi.
Doctor Who podcast, and we cover everything in the Whoniverse from one corner to the other and beyond. So we do episode reviews, book reviews, action figure stuff, commentaries, guest interviews, fan interviews, all sorts of stuff. And for this episode, this is our first sort of regular episode with our saucy new branding, which was made by
Saucy.
our graphic designer that we have, who's Paolo the Town.
Hi.
So-
Pleased to meet you, everybody. My name's Paolo the Town. Where'd you get that from, Paolo the Town? You've been Googling my surname, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, I didn't go to all that trouble to make it exotic enough. You got to render it down to the town. But you make my first name more exotic by adding an O to it. Nice. See, he's obviously put a lot of thought into this, ladies and
I'm
gentlemen.
going to credit you as Paolo on this
Paolo
episode.
the Town. Paolo the Town.
So, yes, thanks for that, Paolo. Looks great.
I'll tell you what, yeah, he's an amazing graphic designer.
He is,
Honestly,
yeah.
you should pay him far more than you do for this. I mean, literally pay him.
Yeah, yeah, pay him, full stop. So, for this episode, we wanted to kind of re-kick things off a little bit by
Re-kick. Not just kick.
it's just, yeah.
Re-kick.
Well, it's sort of a new jumping on point, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
By talking about things that we love about Doctor Who, not just things
It's a great idea.
that we like, but things that
Yeah.
other people, our listeners, like and have given us their comments and thoughts on. Because if you're listening, you're probably aware that the fandom can be quite negative.
Boo!
There's a lot of moaning, there's a lot of criticising, and you always wonder, do any of the fans actually like the thing that they're supposed to be a fan of? And we're here to not be like that, really. Now, we will say if we didn't like something, but generally,
It's been a bit challenging lately.
it has been a bit challenging lately.
But we still managed to find a positive in things,
Yeah.
I hope, as well as
I think
expressing
so,
our
yeah.
opinions genuinely as they are.
Yes,
But, yeah.
which you should do, but it's not. We're not here to just sort of
No.
complain
We don't
about
hate
things.
on things. No, we love it when people enjoy things that we don't.
Yes.
Genuinely, and I'm not
Yeah.
just saying that just to be, just to be an idiot, but it's actually true. If you love something and we don't love it, tell us all about it. We're not going to shout you down for it. We are
Yeah.
going to celebrate the fact that you enjoy it, because that is what Doctor Who is all about, and that is what this episode of the podcast is all
Yeah.
about. To kind of prove that to ourselves and to our lovely listeners in a
Yes.
way.
Yeah, and I think in a way, we've had a couple of seasons recently that for both of us were a little bit of a challenge perhaps. So
Some highs and lows.
Yeah, some highs and lows. So what do we love about the show? And kind of
Yeah.
re-look at that and reassess that slightly.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of go through 5 things each and talk a little bit about them and look at some of the comments from other people. So shall we, let's kick this off, Paul. Let's re-kick this off.
Re-kick. Yeah, we're doing that.
Would you like to go first or shall I?
I'll let you take the floor,
Okay.
Jeff. You can go first.
So the first thing that I'm going to say that I love about Doctor Who is that I think it's creatively unlimited. I think this
Ooh,
is
that's
a
a big
show.
statement.
It's a show that can do anything. You can go anywhere, go any when, and I think because of its sci-fi and trappings, and lately a little bit of fantasy, I think it allows you to sort of bend the rules and push it and stretch it and flex it to do anything, and in some ways, I think a bit about Buffy and how that had a similar thing, the Hellmouth, and things would come out of it and come to the town for it, and it would allow them to kind of bend the show to do different things. You had a musical, or you had an Angel episode where they turned into puppets, and you had an alien land in one and stuff like that, and Who is like that, but on an even bigger scale. You could do anything and be able to justify it within it. We just had the Doctor and Belinda become animated, and there was an explanation behind it.
Was there?
Yeah, there
You
was.
sure?
Yeah, and
Of course there was. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think you could do almost anything within this show, and I love that we can go from silly just sort of straight up adventure one week to a more horror tinged thing the next week, to something a bit more kind of hard sci-fi, something that is more kind of emotionally kind of character driven the next week, still with elements of sci-fi. It can do so much. So that's one of my things. None of these are in particular order. Maybe they're counting down, I don't know, but there we go.
I don't know. Yeah, so that was your number 5, or one of your 5, whichever one it was. Pick a number. I like that, Jeff. And I totally agree. The premise of the show is all of time and space, basically, isn't it? And it has never failed to deliver on that. We've gone from the Crusades in the Middle Ages to the world of the Menoptera and the Zarbi Vortis, indeed. Within the very first years of Doctor Who, we've been to the home planet, the Cybermen, sort of.
Yeah,
one of their
them,
many home planets. We've been in the far-flung future, the very future. We've been to Gallifrey, the past, and oh my goodness, for a show that is just it's incredible, really. I love that. I would agree with that one. Okay, so do you want one of mine now?
Yes, go for it.
I'm going to go with the big one to start with, because I might forget this, but I'm going to go with the Doctor. Doctor himself, herself, the Doctor themselves, because that for me is the Doctor. For me is the biggest draw for this show, bar none. If you take the Doctor out of any of the stories, it becomes slightly different. It's somehow, I'm not saying it's diminished in some way, but it doesn't have the same kind of energy when the Doctor's in it. Now, Blink is one of those stories that is often lauded as the best since sliced bread. It's always top and everything else, but it doesn't have the Doctor in it. 73 Yards is another good story, at least I think so, and it doesn't have the Doctor in it, and both of those things are somehow lacking. Okay, Blink does have the Doctor, but in a slightly reduced role, so he does at least appear and sort of drive the plot to some degree. But the thing about the Doctor is, regardless of all of that, is that the Doctor is a different kind of hero for this kind of story. So for those of you who've never seen the podcast before or listened to us before, right? I'm a little bit older than Jeff, and I kind of grew up in the sort of mid to late 70s and then through the 80s. And a lot of the stuff that was on TV then was all very, a lot of this stuff was very kind of action driven. Right? So on the adult side of things, we had like the Sweeney and the Professionals and stuff like that. What are you going to say?
Weren't you in your 20s in the 70s?
Shut up. I gave you the floor and you just insult me with it. This is going to happen a lot, people. But do not fear, because I will get my own back at some point. So, anyway, point is, right, back in the 70s and 80s, and probably way back when, action heroes were always of a type. And the Doctor was never that type. The Doctor was not the sort of hero who would reach in his inside blazer pocket and go shooting out the bad guys. And that's fun. I enjoy that, not going to lie. But the Doctor relied on other things: intelligence, wit, humour, more than anything else. So for me, the Doctor was Tom Baker. Pretty much that's the Doctor I kind of first encountered as I was growing up, and I love the fact that he could literally charm and joke his way out of anything. Okay, so it didn't always go to plan, but he would respond to being thrown into a room by some heavy gang mob geezer by saying, "What a wonderfully violent butler you have," or something like that, which I think is great. Now, for me, right, when I was growing up, when I was at school back in the day, right, I mean, I did live in a very rough town, Mr. Jeff. It was very rough, a very rough town on the northeast coast, and it were bleak, and it were cold, and it were full of violence. Literally, I would go to shop to get me mum and dad a packet of fags, and it was basically sort of 50-50 whether I would make it home alive or not. I would have to run the entire way. But if on the very rare occasion I would get caught by hoodlums, then I would try my best to joke my way out of it. And more often than not, it did actually work. So I escaped many a beating just by trying to be a little bit like the Doctor, because I'm not a fight. I never have been, really. I'm not that kind of person. Everyone I knew as I was growing up with, they sort of, measure their worth by how many kids they've beaten up and how they did it and stuff like that. And that was never me. I just wasn't that person. And I sort of always used to feel like I didn't really fit in a lot of other groups. And that's not just as a child, but also kind of growing up, even as an adult. I have to, it's almost like sometimes I have to pretend to be someone. I have to take on a role in order to fit into a certain group of people. I'm actually pretty good at that, so I kind of do it. But it's not really me. It's like I've never really found a place where I really kind of fit in. So to have a kind of hero or an anti-hero in some ways who kind of represents that element of being an outsider, it's really enlightening, and it's really uplifting, and it gives, it's always given me a kind of, sort of strength when I've needed it, and it's so important to have, throughout life, just to have someone you can identify with who is in a position that they're able to change things, and be the hero on TV, in real life, whatever. It's important to be represented, whoever you are, and I think the Doctor does that, not just for me, but for so many people in so many other kind of personal ways. And of course, the Doctor seems to have a lot of good fun as well. Sometimes they have the universe thrown at them and it's quite difficult, as we all do from day to day. But, by approaching everything with a quick mind and a stab at humour, the Doctor seems to be able to pretty much weather anything. So I really like that. If it wasn't for the Doctor, we'd have no Doctor Who. I mean, it sounds kind of obvious, really, doesn't it? Yeah. But to have a hero who can change physically and everything as well, it's just, it keeps the show going. It keeps things moving forward. So, there you go. There's one of my 5, the Doctor.
Do you think, or did you think, what would the Doctor do?
Do you know what? I did. I never had it on my hand, but when I saw it in whatever that story was it War of the Centaurans, actually?
Yeah, it was.
When Yaz goes through the temple of Atropos. Atropos, and she said, and I thought, that's absolutely right, because at least mentally, it's like, what would the Doctor do? So, I mean, for me, to be fair, it was the Doctor or Spider-Man, right? So I was always trying to be one or the other. Me and my other friend, when we were kids, it was, that was the things we were both into, sort of. I mean, for me, it was the Target novels, but that's going to be one of my other number 5, so I'm not going to talk about those. But
you solved that problem with your web butt, didn't you?
Yeah, but the trouble is I never had web stuff, right, on web butt. But I could quite often reach in for a joke, and it was usually a bad joke or some sarcastic way of taking the piss out of whoever was going to punch me on the nose.
Yeah.
So they didn't always like it, and sometimes they would try and punch me anyway, in which case I would run very fast, like Spider-Man, Peter Parker. So that was always a good skill. Yeah. I think the ability to run fast and tell jokes and take the piss out of people actually can get you through life pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good skills to have. Yeah. Right, I'm going to go to some of the thoughts that we've had from some of our listeners. So first of all, over on Twitter is Kim McAllister, who's number 1 is the Doctors. Every single actor has been amazing.
There you
number
go.
2, the Husbands of River Song, which is the best episode ever. The 11th Hour was the first episode she ever watched. The Pating and the Adipose are the best aliens, and the toilet and the toilet plunger on every Dalek.
Yes.
And Spider at Universal Event says, it has been my constant companion, my TV wife. Buffy was my TV mistress. I like that, very good, I have liked some eras more than others, but I remain loyal to the programme and always find something to enjoy, much like us. And their 5th point was, it's made me really good at lists, which is excellent for the purposes
That's pretty good.
of this episode.
Excellent.
And our pal Tony Filer says, as someone who was bullied as a kid, Doctor Who was a perfect archetype. Wild, terrifying archetype. Wild,
I'm so sorry, Tony. You see the quality of the people I'm dealing with here. You get what you're given, frankly.
Shut up, the towel. Wild, terrifying threats, wonderful cleverness, and above all, a hand to hold on a big adventure, and someone to stand between us and the bullies. Long may it fly, all joy and gibberish. this is quite interesting. Randy Allain says, whenever Doctor Who works, it's because it celebrates humanity and the power of people above all the gimmicks. I know people think Blink is popular because of the Weeping Angels, but it's popular because Sally is bursting with love and humanity.
Ooh,
And
that's
I
good.
think that's
yeah.
a really good point.
It's Sally's story, isn't it?
It
Really,
is,
that's
yeah,
the thing.
yeah.
And we're invested in her story.
Yeah. And like you said, the Doctor's not really in it, but she still sort of fills that role a little bit. Apologies, I've just seen the rest of the points on Spider, a universal event. To number one was it's the most flexible format on television. Yep, agreed. I've learnt loads watching the programme, very useful in pub quizzes. It made me a reader, thanks Terence, and it has given me amazing life experiences. Albert Hall, hello. And then number five was about being really good at lists. And Quillpen here says, for me, Doctor Who is joyous, scary, and aliens. Or look at ourselves. The 13th Doctor running across a beach after an astronaut. 15th Doctor running around his TARDIS with and without friends. The 9th Doctor saying, hello, Rose Tyler, run for your life. The 11th Doctor, giraffe dancing.
Run for your life.
10th Doctor's Alonzi, and 1st Doctor saying, close the door, Susan. So all sorts of different moments that kind of, for Quilpen kind of encapsulate, favourite moments and memories of the show there. Right, do you want to do another one of our points, or have you got some thoughts to read there?
Sorry, say that again. What did you say?
I said, do you want to do one of your points, or have you got some thoughts to read
I thought
out?
we took it in turn because I did the last one, so I thought you were going to do another one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right,
come on, let's do it. Let's be fair about this, Jeff.
My next point, you sort of just beat me to it really, is the Doctor. I put down here in my notes, we want to be their friend, whichever version you love the most. I think that, much like you said, the Doctor is a character that, we know that we would have fun and adventure with, but also someone I think that could, show us the world, show us the universe, but not just literally, but I think people grow and they change with the Doctor, and they learn more about themselves and who they are and how they fit into the world, and in some cases what they want to do. Like thinking about Ryan, he travelled with the Doctor but realised his place was on Earth, and that was where it moved him to. So and like you said, the Doctor is a character unlike any on TV. There's no fisticuffs. There's the occasional punching of a racist or whatever, but there's no shooting. And I remember my son saying to me a while ago, does Doctor Who have a weapon? And I said, no, just a screwdriver. And he was a bit surprised by that, because not that he's watching stuff where people are shooting particularly, but Spider-Man has webs, Iron Man has his blasters, and all this sort of thing. And so the Doctor really is unusual as a sort of action hero in many ways, that doesn't adhere to the action sort of stereotypes at all.
Absolutely.
Which makes one of my favourite rumours from a few years ago that Jason Statham was going to be the next Doctor even funnier. Because can you imagine if that happened? Get in the TARDIS. Fuck off, Davros.
Tell you how it is.
Yeah. Just like that. Yeah,
it would be a different show, wouldn't it? Let's be honest.
Been, very different.
Yeah. No going back from there.
Yeah. So I would also say, the Doctor. I want to elaborate on it a bit later, but yeah.
The thing about the screwdriver is quite interesting, actually, because, like you say, all these other sort of superheroes and whatever, they've all got something, haven't they? They've always got a thing, and it's usually quite climactic and explosive and brilliant, and there's a lot of fun to be had with that. I'm not going to knock it at all, But the Doctor screwdriver, by comparison, I mean, to be fair, it's only in the modern series that has become quite so elevated into a kind of do it all, literally click a button, get out of this, or blow that up, or open the doors and everything else. And okay, it was occasionally in the old series, like it would get rid of the minefield in the Sea Devils.
Yeah.
I think that was probably about as active as we saw it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Really, and it wasn't in every story. It was very, very fleeting. It was always the Doctor getting into trouble and getting out of it either by the help of their companions or their wits and cleverness, and sometimes too clever to be sure. So the Doctor was quite often overcome by his own hubris at times, but that's also part of the fun as well, because the Doctor is, a flawed character, not perfect by any stretch. Tom Baker goes into a sulk at the start of The Brain of Morbius, and Sarah Jane has to do all the digging and ends up being blind for an episode. So, and absolutely terrified out of her wits, which brings me, rather neatly, you might say, to my next point. Hey, let's see that.
It's like we planned it.
Yeah, which is the word simply terrifying. How often over the years, across so many generations, has a single programme produced so many wet beds of a night time, eh? I'm putting it mildly. You know what I mean, right? Some of the earliest memories I have from watching Doctor Who have been absolutely bedwettingly terrifying. I mean, really, really proper flipping scary.
Sloshing around.
Yeah, sloshing around in my bed. But I think there was a genuine concern about this, back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, perhaps, I don't know. But not something I did actually suffer from at all. But we've all had the cliche hiding behind the sofa, maybe to drop a quick poo or something like that. I don't know.
Hiding in a pool of wee.
Pool of your own feces. Look, let's keep this clean, Jeff. Behave. Look, we might have children listening, for heaven's sake. Come on, right? What was I going to say? Yeah. So terrifying visuals, right? I mean, of the modern series, there are many. The weeping angels suddenly appearing in those little snapshots.
Gas mask.
Terrifying gas masks.
Yeah.
Neither of my daughters can watch that episode again. I tell you not. I mean, Freya just cannot deal with masks now, purely because of that episode. I'm so proud. She's traumatized. Gas masks are the worst. And my eldest daughter, who doesn't even watch Doctor Who, she cannot deal with actually both weeping angels and the gas mask morphing kind of thing. Yeah, she just doesn't do it. For me, it was again back in the 70s, City of Death, when Count Scarleone pulled his face off to reveal a spaghetti mess of worms. That was terrifying. I would not go to bed. I would not go up to bed in the dark. I remember at the foot of the stairs kicking off big time, because I did not want to get to the top of the stairs, go in the bathroom, look in the mirror and see a face on the other side of it that was removed to reveal worms. Obviously not my face, because my face isn't like that particularly, but at least not on a Saturday anyway. But it was, it's those kind of things that just somehow get deep into your subconscious and stay with you for life. And there's other shows out there that are kind of scary, but I don't think anything comes as close to being viscerally terrifying, so terrifying as Doctor Who when it really wants to go there.
Yeah. I mean, when I watch it, I'm not sort of scared per se, but I can absolutely understand.
You're a big boy.
Well, yes,
a big, brave boy.
I can understand how something could be scary, and sometimes when I'm watching, I think, oh, could I show my kids this one? Actually, no, I think they'd be, quite scared by whatever it is. And we did watch, maybe it was Star Beast a while ago, and someone was blasted and they disintegrated, and I thought, because we watched it when it went out live, and I thought, oh dear. I wasn't expecting that to happen.
Your kids were watching it as well, is that what you mean?
Yeah. And I thought, oh, am I going to have to explain that, what someone's just been
turned to... They weren't really vaporised.
Ash, yeah.
It was a special effect.
Yeah, and, I think something like, the Weeping Angels would terrify them, or the silence, but I think it's good to be.
The silence are terrifying looking, aren't they?
I mean, I do think
faces like the scream.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
amongst the scream.
And I do think it's good to be a little bit scared, from time to time. So yeah, I think that's a really good.
I'll tell you what, actually, you're talking about the ray gun disintegration effects in Star Beast. Have you ever seen episode 1 of The Dominators, of Patrick Troughton's story, Second Doctor, in his final year? Now, the thing is, right, so The Dominators is a 5-episode story, and in the very first episode, there's somebody running along this landscape, and they get shot by a quark, one of the little robot creature. That sounds pretty harmless, doesn't it? But mate, the effect they use on that one shot,
really,
it's absolutely gross. It's nasty. And it's nasty at a level, it's like nasty at level 11. It's ratcheted right up. And the weird thing is, when the quarks shoot others in the story later on, they never use the same effect. presumably it was just too expensive and too time consuming to do back in the day. But it's horrible, really horrible. And you got things like the Autons as well. Spearhead from Space, Terror of the Autons, Rose. I mean, those blank faces. I mean, they're just bursting out shop windows and things. And Russell T Davies knew the impact that should have.
Yeah.
That's why he brought them back for that very first episode and showed what we'd never actually seen, but what was implied back in Spearhead from Space. We kind of heard them breaking out of the shop window in Ealing Broadway and then marching down the street, gunning terrified shoppers and citizens. But in Rose, we actually saw them do that, and that was great. That was a wonderful moment for me. So, yeah.
And actually, on that, I'll kind of throw in a bonus one. That
I like it.
The show often takes things that we know and we recognise and puts
twist them somehow,
scares into them, like in the Idiot's Lantern, the TV sort of sucking you in, and the blank face thing, or the silence. It's like that thing of of seeing something out the corner of your eye, and it's forgetting it. It's the silence,
and instantly forgetting it when you look away.
And the Weeping Angels was based on a playground game, I think. So Moffat took that and corrupted it.
We gave it a kind of sciencey reason as well, didn't it? Which kind of works.
Yeah.
So they're somehow playing on quantum science.
Yeah.
So that element of uncertainty, it's only there when it's observed.
Yeah.
And it's kind of locked into positions. It's like that Schrodinger's cat experiment.
Yes.
Where there's a cat in the box with some poison. You shut the box. Is the cat alive or dead? Has it eaten the poison and died? Or is it not eaten the poison? Does it live? And you won't know until you open the box. So until you open the box, it exists kind of in both states.
Yeah.
Which is how the Angels kind of work. And I love how they've also kind of pushed that on. So we saw them in Blink, to kind of set them up as that idea. But then we saw them in, was it Flesh and Stone?
Yes.
When they're on the TV, represented as an angel, and then we get the image of an angel is as powerful as the angel. So that then sort of brings it to the mind, the whole thing of simulation and reality, hyper-reality. So is what we see on TV the real thing? Because we experience it as though it were real, and we kind of, encouraged almost to do that. So it pushes it on even further.
Yeah.
And then we get out-and-out horror in Angels Take Manhattan, and also Village of the Damned as well, which is using the angels purely on a more visual and visceral kind of level. They're a great monster. I think they are the best monster to come out of the modern series, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right, a couple of other people's thoughts. Matthew Gibson lists the TARDIS, K9, the music.
There's my number 2 and 3 gone. That's the only trouble we're doing this, isn't it?
Well, no, we can say, I'm sure other people have our things as well.
It's going to happen, isn't it?
The speeches in the modern series, the monsters and the villains.
Interesting.
And Matthew's added number 6, which would be all the people who've made the show in the last 60 odd years. And thanks for keeping the positive vibes going in the fan base. I'm not sure if that's aimed at us.
Oh, is that for us?
Yes, possibly. Thanks, guys. Well, thank you, Matthew. Dark Prime says the Doctor's energy. I assume they mean just energy,
just
not
sheer energy
not
of the
regeneration energy. Morality tales for any given time. Fantastic worlds and times.
Definitely.
The alien and human dynamics and the costumes. The costume. That's a good point. Now I haven't really. Haven't thought about that, but yes, that's very good. Bertie Odell says, hard to pinpoint what I love succinctly. I've grown up with Who. My first memories are from Invasion of Time, the Sontarans coming down Gallifreyan steps, and I was hooked for life. Jodie's era is now easily my favourite, an utterly joyous Doctor, but there's always something to love. And the Timeless Child says, I love how every episode is different and we all have different favourites. It shows that there is literally an episode of Doctor Who for anyone and all of it can exist. I think that's brilliant because that's really true. We've said this before, you might watch an episode and think, oh, that was amazing. Someone else might watch it and it just doesn't click, and they think it's bad. I don't really think there is truly any bad Who. It's how it works.
Somebody always likes it. Yeah, absolutely.
And how it connects to you. And I think it's quite important to try to, to remember that.
Yeah, definitely. Every Doctor Who story is potentially somebody's first and will hook them for life.
Yes.
Regardless. I mean, yeah. What was your first Doctor Who story, Jeff?
Well, I can remember watching Silver Nemesis, on TV.
Was that the first complete story that you ever watched? Do you think?
I don't know if it was complete or not, but I remember the Cybermen. I remember the Arrow and stuff. And back then I was 8, 9 maybe. So.
Oh wow! I didn't realise you were that much younger than me.
Yeah.
Drake.
And I don't remember if I saw.
He looks older though, ladies and gentlemen.
It's because
listening.
I'm very tired today. I don't know whether it was I saw it every week or not, but I remember it, and I remember bits of survival and stuff as well.
Interesting.
So my next thing that I love about Doctor Who is the expanded world of it. So that's
going to do that as well.
Well, you can still do it. You can explain your reasons.
Anyway, your expanded world. Come on.
So books, audios, games, comics, even action figures. I've got a few behind me there that you can see. I kind of think, what other show has as much? I know Star Wars has things, and Marvel and stuff, but Doctor Who has all of this history and all these other books that have come out within it, and the huge output from Big Finish and extra stories and things, and it's all still going strong. Just by me, I've got the two new 15th Doctor books here that just come out, and we've got new 13th Doctor audios coming next month, and your Doctor's time on screen might have finished, but there will still be other new stories that you haven't read or heard before, and I think that's brilliant that we can probably never get our fill of Doctor Who. There's always so much, and then so in the stories, but then you've got figures, make your own stories, take your photographs, create scenarios like that. So I love it all. All the extra stuff. I think we're so lucky that they continue to produce this stuff for us.
Absolutely right.
And we've looked at various books and comics and audios on our show, haven't we, over the years.
And we've interviewed writers, directors, actors from the show and from Big Finish. And, yeah, it's all good. Okay, so my next point takes on from that actually, but I'm going to focus specifically on the books, and I guess in particular two kinds of books that I grew up with. And the first one I'm going to hold up here so you can kind of see it is the Target novels. Yep. Now, bizarrely, this isn't a Target novel, though it is a Target novel. So back in the day, the Target novels were all the paperbacks, but the publisher W.H. Allen used to produce hardback copies of them as well, and this is one of them, which is one of my favourite stories of all time, because I read it at a very formative age, and when I was growing up, I didn't see a lot of Doctor Who. It was always on. I think I've said it on the podcast before, but if you're listening for the first time, when I was a kid, I was often out, mostly escaping hoodlums on my bike, like shouting jokes at them and running away and cycling away very quickly. So that used to give me hours and days of fun. So I rarely had time to watch an entire episode of Doctor Who. But occasionally I would, and it would terrify me. But when I discovered a whole kind of almost like do you know what's that? There's a thing in mythology, a kind of magical object which constantly replenishes its contents. Can't remember what that is, but anyway, that's kind of what the shelf in the kids section at my local library was like. So it's like whenever I went there would always be new Doctor Who Target novels to kind of pick up and read. And I think I was only allowed 4 books at a time or something like that. And pretty much all 4 of those books would be hardback Doctor Who novels.
It's a magic bag, un sac magique.
Un sac magique. I thought it was a cornucopia or something like that. It's the same. I think it's a myth in lots of different cultures and what have you. But either way, my library was du magic du sac du magic. That's what it was.
Did you visit that in Leville, where you lived?
I'm just going to move on from that, to be honest, mate.
I don't know why I've come up with that tonight.
But here's the thing, right? Look at this cover by Chris Achilleos, I believe. Sarah Jane with the spider on her back. I mean, that's blinding. And this one was particularly special because it features on its cover the changing face of Doctor Who. Now, this is the third Doctor's final story. Yeah. And the great thing about this was because back in the day when there were no repeats on TV, there were no DVDs or videos or out like that, the only way we could enjoy previous Doctor Who was to read about it on the book. So these kind of adventures and stories, for me, more Doctor Who was I encountered more Doctor Who that way than I ever did on TV. And sometimes, of course, these novelizations have sort of changed slightly. They're slightly bigger scope. They're expanded. Terrance Dicks wrote loads of these and had a lot of fun just maybe making things work a little bit better and a little bit bigger and stuff like that. And the weird thing is, in some ways, when I eventually got round to watching the entire back catalogue of Doctor Who, which I think was really from the 90s onwards. I watched it through the 80s kind of avidly as it came out on TV, but it wasn't until the 90s when I got to see a lot of the Tom Baker stuff that I kind of half remembered, and of course everything that happened before that, so all the John Pertwee stuff and Patrick Troughton and William Hartnell stuff, and then of course it was coming out on, so it was out on a channel, UK Gold, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then it came out on. Then they started releasing the stories on video VHS more regularly and more cheaply, importantly, than they ever had done previously. So that was great fun. Yeah. But so that's the first kind of book. And for those, I think, of the same sort of generation as me, and you've read about these guys, Mark Gatiss, I think, dotes on the Target novels, Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, they all just love those kind of things, and there is something really special about them if you were growing up in that time, and I'm sure they're pretty special now, which is great. But I think because so much Doctor Who is instantly available to watch, certainly in the UK, I'm sure it's probably a little bit different elsewhere, but over here you could just switch on iPlayer and get one of the old stories from any time. But there's just something about encountering a Doctor Who story through the novelisation of it that just kind of, I don't know, just for me anyway, makes it special. And I love the fact, this kind of alludes back to what you were saying, Jeff, that we've got a show that can not only, can we not only read novels that are novelizations of the show we watched and enjoyed and allow us to kind of experience them in a slightly different way. I mean, when I've got my shelf there, what's that, the Witchfinders and Dalek, there's differences between them, which give you a different a different take on the story, perhaps, that you saw on TV. So it almost becomes its own separate thing, which I think is great. But not only do we have have those stories based on the programs, the stories we watch on TV, we have original stories as well, like another one, Combat Magics, right there, and the 15 Doctor Who books behind you, and it's great. Such a wealth of stories,
and that's something
like you said, creatively diverse. I think,
and having these original novels is great as well, because like you said, the target is one thing; it's an adaptation of something we may or may not have already seen, and these are original, and occasionally, not so much these books, but a short comic like What I Did Over the Christmas Holidays by Sally Sparrow is adapted into the show itself and becoming Blink.
It starts to feed itself, doesn't it? Right, and The Lodger as well, I think, was another one, wasn't it? Which appeared as a one-off
Jubilee
Doctor Who magazine.
Dalek.
Jubilee, from Big Finish, Rob Shearman again.
But these are original, and there's some great ones. There's been less of them in the last couple of years, but they're all generally.
Well, you've got two on your shelf behind you.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to So I'm just going to hop back over to Twitter for a couple of comments here. So Jordan Jones, who's a new name to us, says,
"Hey, Jordan.
I think this is needed now more than ever in the fandom." So he says, "There's an era for everyone. No era is the same. The creative variety in the monsters. The message behind the show, Space for All, which kind of you sort of alluded to earlier. He's met some of his best friends thanks to Doctor Who and Just the TARDIS. Jordan also put one here, a very personal bonus one. The fact I owe this show so much of my 28 years on this planet. It has gotten me through some of the darkest times of my life. The character of the Doctor has shaped my path through life and helped me be better when I thought I was lost. Um,
That's really good.
that's really, yeah. And I'd like to say thank you, Jordan, for sharing that. And we get messages from people sometimes, sort of telling us similar things, don't we, Paul? I remember there was a lady she'd been in hospital for ages for something. She discovered us and had been listening to us, but Doctor Who had got her through that time and had been, sort of a companion for her there. And, I'm sure we've all had, times when life's been difficult and you're feeling peed off and, whatever. And you've got, a comfort episode or era that you can go to and put it on, and, it brings you joy and, can lift you up. And, going back to what we said, about, people might say, that's a bad episode, or, whatever. It's irrelevant. When an episode does something for you, if you could say, technically it's bad. Well, that it doesn't matter.
I love the voice you put on for that. We have said in the past ourselves, technically it's bad, it's awful. For a couple of stories, we try not to do that as much as possible, but we're out there, mate. We are guilty of this. So
yes,
I'm sure you've used that voice yourself.
No, I think you're referring to my dislike of the Ruby Road sign in Empire of Death. That is bad, but there's also good stuff in the episode. If someone said to me, Empire of Death was really moving for me because I could relate to Ruby's journey.
This is the difference.
Absolutely brilliant, and I think it's the way you respond to things.
Totally. Yeah.
So
I mean, we would always recognise that somebody loves the story that we dislike, for whatever reason, and it is usually for personal reasons, and there's a danger that you attack that story, you somehow, or there's a danger that you actually attack the people who love it, and we've seen that happen on social media a lot. And I think they're just a whole kind of saturation of content on social media enables that to happen very, very quickly and very impactfully.
Yeah.
So it's not a great thing. So we do try and avoid that. And if we do attack a show, we love it when people love the show we dislike genuinely, because it just proves the point that there's always something about every episode of Doctor Who to love for somebody. So, I think it's a wonderful thing, and people's love of the Doctor Who should be celebrated, as indeed we are doing right now through this very podcast.
Right, I'm just going to read a couple more quickly, then I'll come out with another one of my things. Jack
excited.
Mayfield lists the costumes, the TARDIS interiors. Jack, that's a good one. I haven't thought about that.
I never thought of that one, yeah.
The
We'll just have to leave
writing.
that to Jack, I suppose.
The writing, the Britishness as an American, collectibles, especially the action figure lines. Yes, as Jack may know, we're very good friends with Al Dewar from Character Options, and we quite often feature action figure stuff on there. And in fact, if you're watching this on the day of release, earlier in the week, we will have done just that. So go check that out. But over the years, this goes back to my thing about the expanded universe. I bought various, of the figures and stuff, but, having, gotten in touch with Al and developed a really good friendship there with him, and sort of, discovering the character line more, and meeting people like Scott from Gallifrey Customs and, various other, figure fans and customizers online. I've kind of really gotten into all of that. And, I the figures themselves are, fantastic, I think. And I just kind of, really enjoy seeing what people do creatively with them, and, seeing what's going to come out in the line next, and, having things up on the shelf and, kind of showing, a love for something through really well-made, models that are made with a real love for the show. Yeah. So that's that. Right.
Nicely put.
Yep. My next thing that I love about Doctor Who, you could probably say, no, this is not a bit of a cheat, because this sort of, I was going to say,
Go on.
So I wrote down hope and kindness and
Oh,
optimism, which are very much kind of core traits of the Doctor. And I did say the Doctor earlier, but I've also put adventure, danger, and scares, and basically that huge gamut of
gamut.
emotions that we get from the show. And I like that. Essentially the show is about, as the 12th Doctor sort of, I paraphrase, but it's about being kind to people. It's about helping people, and trying to live your best life, trying to have fun and an adventure, and see the positive in things. I think our world is, swamped with negativity and problems and all that kind of thing, and to have a character and particularly liked this in the 13th Doctor, and also the 15th was very kind of joyful as well. I think it's brilliant. A lot of stuff on TV drama, it's quite dark and it's quite heavy, and Doctor Who can do that as well. Like the Well, this series was quite quite an intense episode, but there's still moments of fun and joy in it, and it's balanced. And like I said, it's good to be scared a little bit, but the Doctor is a character that sort of has so many facets to them, as does the show. And I love that we have a hero who is just kind of about adventure and joy and kindness.
And would
To
always
people.
experience things for the first time with that sense of joy as well. Almost,
Yeah.
on meeting a new alien or a new anything.
Yes.
The Doctor would always go at it from the best in, always give them the benefit of a doubt, for want of better words, really. You know what I mean? It's they would always assume they're friendly rather than hostile.
And that's
in
a
most
very
cases.
good point. And the Doctor, even though the Doctor is thousands of years old, is still excited for things. I'm thinking of 13, looking at that antimatter drive thing in Saranga Conundrum, and she's like really excited about it. And that's brilliant to see.
It's kind of a bit of geekiness kind of coming through as well, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like someone who's really into motorbikes finds like a brand new motorbike engine that had never been seen before, and is so much more efficient and compact and brilliant than anything they've ever seen. So it's like, wow, that's amazing. But you can see that, and again, it's so if you're that sort of person, to see the Doctor being so excited by the things that you're excited about in a way, then it's wonderful. It's brilliant.
But which we do, when we get a new figure or a new book or whatever it might be, So
absolutely, yeah. No,
right.
Good one. I like that. That's pretty decent. Should we do a couple of Facebook?
Yes.
Because we've got quite a lot of. There's more coming in actually, even while I've just gone online. Yes, I might have to just excuse me while I refresh this to get the new ones in. Dun, 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 which means I have to find a post again, which is fine because it's
read
right,
a
I've
couple
done it,
out.
mate. It's here.
Okay.
I've got it. Do not fear. So we've got. Let's have a look. So we've got Pamela Henro, who says, okay, I think there's a long one actually. Pamela Henro, who is a regular on the show actually.
Thank you.
So thanks for putting this one in, Pam. So Pamela's wrote, okay, I love Jodie and Mandip, Peter and Jenna, Tom and Liz, my first. A lot of Moffat's twisty, turny, timey-wimey stuff. Chibnall's back to basics, relatively straightforward stories with super normal companions, historicals, especially Chibnall era, moral dilemmas, like you said, Jeff. Also, Pamela continues, I never know how to say this, but I love how chaotic it is. I grew up in the US, so we had Star Trek, and I wasn't into it. All uniforms and structure. I love that it's about a weirdo runaway with a time machine that's a bit broken, but obviously still amazing, and the stories are all over the place.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's really good. Actually, to be fair, Star Trek was the other thing I grew up with a lot. So we obviously had it over here in the UK, and I loved it. That, to be fair, was something I probably watched a lot more of than Doctor Who back in the 70s. But it was just because of the timing. It's just Saturday evening for me was not the best time. I was usually out somewhere, as I said, running from
punks.
running away from getting beat up. Usually, as I said, that was it. So, yeah. But there you go. Right, okay. I'm gonna come up with another one here. Actually, I'm in two minds, right? No, I'm going to go for this one because, again, it's just a sign of me being an old git, really, right? So a lot of you new viewers, I'm sorry, skip forward 5 minutes if you really want to. But for those of you, and I know there are people my age listening to us, right? So I'm going to show you something which you're going to absolutely love. You know what I'm talking about, right? I'm just going to put this word up there, or this name, rather, Peter Haining, right? Now, Peter Haining, back in the day, right, was almost like a sort of historian of Doctor Who. I think he used to write in some of the fanzines and various things, and sort of graduated out of that. And again, we're talking about a time, early 80s, early to mid 80s, when there wasn't a lot, there weren't no repeats. We had Doctor Who magazine, which is great, it was brilliant. So this kind of complemented that sort of non-fiction take on Doctor Who. So for the first time, through books like this one that I'm holding up, which is The Key to Time, a massive hardback coffee table book. We had The Celebration as well, which I think was published before this one, which was published to tie in with the 1983 Longleat celebrations and everything else. And it celebrated 20 years of Doctor Who and sort of delved into its history. And, for the first time for me anyway, sort of lifted the lid on a lot of the making of the stories. And there was actually a book, The Making of Doctor Who, which I'd read as well, but it was relatively thin. So these things were massive, we're talking, I don't know, it's probably about, 100 pages, 150 odd pages or something like that. There's a lot of them. Oh, actually, no, it's 200 and 300 pages nearly. And they're
massively
quite big.
undersold that.
Exactly. But, as a Doctor Who fan, it wasn't just the fiction of the show that I got into. And I know there's a lot of us out there who also love the making of this, the gubbins behind it, the technical aspects, the cameras, how a script is kind of written and put together, who gets to work in it. How do you take a script through the production process to screen? What do the actors do? What do the different people in the crew do? And I loved all that stuff. And I'm going to hold up two other things here as well, which is the Doctor Who program guide from the early 80s. Now, this was actually published, as you can probably see, between sort of Tom Baker and Peter Davison, because Peter Davison, the Fifth Doctor, is really new on that. So this kind of goes back, and actually, I'm sorry, I should have taken it back to the school library, because I'm the only person who ever got this out, because it was brand new, and I kept it. I kept hold of it. But this program guide by Jean-Marc Lefiscier was, it's like a story-by-story sort of guide of, the making of the show, the making of different stories. So a bit of a synopsis, but it has things like, what do you call them, serial codes. Which is crazy. I never heard of anything like that before. Yeah. And I found myself getting into all this minutiae, which would never worry. It's almost as exciting as the fiction of the TV show itself, finding out, as much as I could about how all the stories were made back in the day. And out of all of those books, the most special one was this one, The Key to Time, which was probably the first one I really had, which was bought for me on one of my birthdays. And again, you can see how new this is, because it only goes up to March the 22nd, 1984, and there's a picture of the Sixth Doctor and Perry. Yeah. So the Twin Dilemma, I think, had probably just been on. Right. But there was nothing more after that. This was the latest. It's almost like a snapshot in time of Doctor Who before Attack of the Cybermen, before the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and so on and so on. Yeah. And just to finish up with, the best thing about this book is it's a kind of a chronological history of the book. So it's like a diary, but it's a diary of like newspaper articles that were written current to each show. So for example, we got there's like 1971, and then that is followed by a picture of John Pertwee as the Third Doctor. But as I show you this stuff, right, you will see that a lot of it is all fan art, right? Yeah. So this is fan art from the time, from 1980s, the 70s, and this, in a way, The Key to Time not only opened up that world of behind-the-scenes production, but also the idea that there were other fans out there who cared and were so passionate about the same show that I was getting into, that they were, they were creating these wonderful pictures in all kinds of different styles, in all kinds of different formats, as ink and pencils or paints or whatever it was. And they're incredible. And this book, The Key to Time, it did so much more than just show me about it. It sort of opened, the real worlds of Doctor Who, the worlds that we actually experience, so the fiction, a bit of the facts, but also how fans and even the TV critics sort of viewed the show, and maybe feel a bit more part of that whole sort of community, I guess.
I think that's really interesting, actually, because today, to be part of a fandom of anything is pretty easy, really. There's so many social media platforms and gatherings within it. There's events to go to and things like that. But it's slightly different for me because I, wasn't as sort of aware of everything and into it like you were back, when I was a bit younger. But, you wouldn't have been able to connect so easily with other fans unless you had mates at school or something who were into it.
Nobody that I knew was into Doctor Who. The level that everybody knew about it, but nobody was as obsessed by it as I was.
It was like that when I was, into you too when I was like 11. But if you haven't got that to talk to, there's people to talk to, well, you're sort of on your own. And maybe
I've been a long distance runner.
And maybe you could have, subscribed to a fanzine that might turn up every couple of months or something. But, I think it's hard now to, imagine what it could have been like back then, unless you were sort of in it.
It's a good point, actually. Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to sort of look back and think, well, that's how it is now. It must have been difficult then, but it kind of, that's just how it was, We also had Doctor Who magazine, which I'm going to mention is also as a bonus top 5, because without Doctor Who magazine, certainly in the 90s, sort of holding the fandom together, as it were, whether you were sort of connected as part of a local group or whether you were just out on your own, we all had Doctor Who magazine and still do it, still going strong.
Still going. It's incredible.
Bizarrely, I haven't read it for a little while, but as I've been busy and not as engaged with the show, perhaps I haven't found myself drawn to it as much. But I'm still going to subscribe to it because it just means so much. And the guys have always done a fantastic job.
It's always really good.
Diving into the show itself and giving us things that are exclusives and generating excitement and interest around the show. So they are. They got to be lauded for just carrying that torch with the enthusiasm, dedication, and professionalism that they do. And that's that's not blowing smoke up anyone's ass. I think we've had Jason Quinn on here, the current editor of Doctor Who magazine, and it's just it's incredible what these guys do. It really is. So kudos
and
to
also
them.
That kind of going into the behind the scenes and the production world again, probably rarer and harder back in the day to find out about that sort of thing. And there is an element of, on anything, seeing so much behind the curtain can sort of spoil the magic a little bit, perhaps.
It doesn't, though. It didn't for me. It kind of added to it.
I mean, there's possibly a line, but I just do very much like that sort of thing as well. And, who, must be commended for, Confidential and Unleashed and all of that, and how they've dived into to those things, which has been really
very
good.
much so. Yeah.
Right, I'll just read a couple more comments, then I'm going to read my final thing that I love. Although I have sort of a slightly cheeky bonus that I want to chuck in as well. Space says, I love hearing how much the actors love the show, and that for a lot of them the interactions with fans have been as meaningful to them as they were for us, embodying our favourite characters. Alicia Art says, what I love most is how unique the show is. No other story has a hero who regenerates into a new face, no ship like the TARDIS. And like you said earlier, Paul, I adore that the Doctor wins with wit and a sonic, not weapons or fists, just brainy chaos. There's nothing else like Doctor Who. And quickly, over on Blue Sky, Ian Banks says, it embraces change positively. It promotes acceptance of compassion and hope. It encourages people to step up against evil and negativity. Every actor cast in the role has become a great ambassador for it. and great stories. Ian has put all of that very smartly and
Thank you, Ian.
articulately, brilliantly. Rob Reed says it's a show that moves forward by jumping. I realise jumping deliberately and joyously over every shark it can find. It's
I love it.
it's unafraid to embrace. Unafraid to embrace new mad ideas without worrying if it gets them right. Well, we certainly had a bit of that lately, haven't we, Rob? So
we did.
I hope
that's such a good way to explain it.
Yeah, he says,
I love that.
I want to be more like that. Okay with getting it wrong and being inconsistent, knowing that I'm more than that any one day. I think is how he meant to phrase that there.
Right. Got you.
Baggy says, limitless imagination and change, regeneration, the TARDIS, compassion, even when we least expect to see it, and the aliens.
Very true.
And then we had a few from Chop Monkey. I'm aware of the time. But Chop Monkey said, Uncle Terry's never cruel or cowardly. Statement so much on the money it made it into the 50th anniversary, and it encapsulates so much of the show's DNA, and we love that. The fans, the TARDIS, the music, and dare I add Daleks, he says, as integral to the show's enduring success. Every time they're on screen, we squee in delight, and they never disappoint. And Davros, of course.
Of course.
So my last one that I'm going to throw out is the Jodie Whittaker era for me.
Oh, lovely.
Because I am obsessed. I can't move
really
on.
Is. You can't.
And,
you have to find a way, mate.
Well, I don't need to. They come back to Big Finish. And, I've always loved the show, but when that era started, I fairly quickly realised I've never loved it as much as this before. And it was brilliant. It took all the things that I liked about the Doctor, hope and optimism and adventure and friendship and family and all of that, and pushed it, right up and into the foreground. And the show never looked better, and it was never kind of more ambitious in its scale, and everything about it just, it just resonated so much with me, and I love it all, and we'll bang on about it endlessly. So
he really does.
People who listen know that, so that's
they
great.
Love you for it.
Well, you do too, not as much as me.
I do.
But you also do love it, and also because I know you need to give your last thought. I just want to add the people that we meet along the way. Being involved in the fandom and starting this podcast particularly has led to things like meeting you, a great friend, a best friend that I've
mate
met, and other people like Joe Ford that we've chatted to, or, who's a riotous blast of energy, or Lucy McCall who has always supported us and
talented,
has written,
creative,
written stories that we've turned into audio dramas. Graham Ward, who's always been in our corner.
Very quick-witted, Graham.
Aidan Gooch that we bumped into again at Comic-Con recently. Scott Richards from Gallifrey Customs. Chris Hallam, who I play Magic with. All sorts of people in our
Chris Hallam, who beats you at Magic.
Beats me at Magic. One day. Chris will get his comeuppance.
One day, one of these days, when I'm a brain in a jar really with two little googly eyes poking out.
I nearly got him early in the week.
One day.
And then, the people that we talk to online, Didymus Holmes and, Ian Banks, Tony, Filer that came in earlier, Space, all sorts of people. But it's also, given us the opportunity to, meet and become friends of, Al Dewar, or, Susan Twist that we spoke to, and it should be wonderful, Ray Holman, and, all the other actors that we've chatted with. And,
we've chatted to many over the years,
loads, and Pete Levy, who was producer in
Pete Levy,
Flux,
my
and
goodness.
of course, Chris Chibnall as well.
Chris Chibnall, twice.
Yeah, twice, and Chris has been fantastic with us, and that was brilliant. So the things that have come out of this show, the fandom, meeting Joe Martin as well. I might chuck that in there.
Yeah.
You know, it's been amazing.
Filmed her opening her little figure.
That figure there.
That's pretty amazing, that, mate.
There she is. That's me and her.
There she is. Right.
So yeah, all of that kind of stuff. Brilliant. Yeah.
Lovely. No, that's great. I'm going to read a couple more Facebooks because I only actually read the one. So let's just blast through some of these. So we've got Rebecca Lim, who says, Doctor Who is such an escape from the real world, yet provides me with comfort and advice during challenging times in my life. She says, I'm currently undergoing treatment for a life-limiting condition, and the line from Jodie, don't go in fear, go with that lovely smile. That means so much to me and how I try to approach this part of my life. Doctor Who has been such a gift for me. I think that's lovely. Samantha Lee Schenk says, I love the inclusivity of Doctor Who, how underlying everything is the spirit of change. I think it's been said before, hasn't it? So the Doctor's perspective is alien to the human experience, and it's delightful to explore the ways in which we're different and the same. And I think that's important as well, you know, the fact that Doctor is not quite human, and yet in not being human manages to show us almost how to be human and how we can be better and how we can get through tough times and you know, difficult things. John Cole lists a bunch of stories and things. So John Cole lists number 1, Pyramids of Mars, favourite of all time. 2, Hinchcliffe Era. 3, Tom Baker, and both Peters are my favourites on screen. 4, Tom Baker and Paul McGann are my favourites on Big Finish, but we'll pretty much listen to them all. And then goes number 5, which is quite a long one. Stephen Moffat's time as showrunner has been my favourite so far, the modern era overall, from Matt Smith taking over from David Tennant, who was a big set of shoes to fill, to Peter Capaldi's... What?
I just want to say, do you remember earlier I said that we'd received a message a while ago from someone who'd been in hospital for about a year, and they discovered the podcast? It was Rebecca Lim.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
So you read that out, and it triggered a memory, and I just looked up
took a while.
Facebook in the messages. So that was Rebecca that sent us a message, which was lovely. So, that's brilliant. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, as you were.
Brilliant. Okay, and you have all our love, Rebecca.
Yes.
So what was I doing? Are you completely thrown me now? You could have come out with that earlier, or you could have waited until I'd finished this one at least. Honestly, it's so amateur sometimes. It's just unreal. Right. Okay, so John Cole. Yes, when for me it felt like Doctor Who with drama. That's just completely gone. Let me do this again. Number 5, Stephen Moffat's time as showrunner has been my favourite so far, the modern era overall, from Matt Smith taking over from David Tennant, who was a big set of shoes to fill, to Peter Capaldi's last season with Bill, and my most rewatched of the modern era. When for me it felt like Doctor Who with drama, action, humour and good stories. Sure, I've grown up with Doctor Who. I was born the year Tom took over, so I remember these last few years, but really got into it to Pete Davidson as I was older, and it all made more sense. Same as me then, I think. And maybe I no longer the target demographic, but as long as it's good storytelling, no matter the bells and whistles or the bigger budgets, then long may it continue. Oh, wow, brilliant. Thank you for that, John. That is awesome. We've got Charlie Dawson, who says, I want a Paul McGann and Joe Martin spin-off. Big Finish to start using photos of classic Doctors from Tales of the TARDIS and do stories set after those mini episodes. That's fun as well, isn't it? The mini episodes. Charles also says that I want Perry back in the actual show and love the Riding Screwdriver. Michelle Arnold says, I love Thasmin, and so many other things. I mean, the whole Thasmin thing has been a kind of revolution in a way, hasn't it?
Yeah, do you know, we were going to do an episode on that, weren't we? We didn't get around to it.
Yeah,
we should.
I promise you, we will do it.
Yeah.
Morgan Haynes, hi Morgan. Morgan contributes quite a few times to many of our podcasts, actually. So thank you for that, Morgan. Who says, 1, Doctor Who is an escape from the real life. 2, my favourite Doctor Who's 13. And 3, I love the Doctor Who theme, especially the Jodie era version. It's a modernisation of the original version in 1963. It absolutely is, even down to the kind of redone howl around that we have. And sorry if I didn't read all your comments out. I think it was more sort of flopping in even as I was kind of reading that, really. But
when this episode goes out, please do comment with your thoughts on it as well.
Please do, yes.
So this has been great doing this. We do it every so often, don't we? Yes?
I've still got one more to go.
Oh, you've got one more to go. Oh, okay.
Yeah, honestly, it's such a donkey. See, amateur, again. It's literally amateur. How many years have we been doing this?
About 3. Do we
I think we get the hang of it by now,
ladies
plan? And gentlemen.
No, we're not going on.
It was your plan? Right, anyway. the final thing I want to say, and I know it's been kind of said, but I'm going to go with it. It's the TARDIS, right?
Yeah.
Because it's great. It's such a great storytelling device. And not only that, right, but, it's a magic door, it's a magic wardrobe, whatever, that kind of thing. It's a gateway to other universes, other times and places. It's a device. It's more than that. It has a personality of its own. And how exciting is it, right, that, okay, always on the outside, it's a police box with slightly different flourishes. How exciting is it when we get a new Doctor or a new era starting to kick in, to kind of look forward to what the TARDIS is going to look like. Both on the outside, we know it's going to be a police box, but maybe it's a different shade of blue. Maybe it's got slightly differently frosted windows. Maybe it's got a St. John ambulance sticker on the door, which I was very excited by when I saw it on Matt Smith's debut.
Yeah.
It was it's like going back to that whole Peter Cushing kind of style almost. And then when you go inside through the doors, and what a wonderful conceit from that very first episode, Unearthly Child, when the whole idea of finding this massive cathedral-like space, gleaming futuristic technology, or kind of steampunk brass and valves, or coral and crystal and what have you. It's fabulous, and even in the stories, there's a fair bit of criticism around Doctor Who, that especially stories that spend so much time in the TARDIS, but I love those because I love the TARDIS. I like the idea of it, and I also like the alienness of it as well. And I used to have weird sort of nightmares about the TARDIS as well. There's a sort of surreal kind of vibe to the whole machine. There's parts of it that we don't know about, that we've never seen, that maybe the Doctor's never seen.
Yeah, quite possibly.
And when stories kind of play on that, it gives the whole show a different edge. We've also had a TARDIS disguised as real people, a real person, compassion in the Eighth Doctor novels. We've had a fossilized TARDIS. We've had a TARDIS turned into or hidden within the Bone Palace.
Recently,
it's a magical device of absolutely infinite possibilities, a wondrous technology, and I think, and I love those stories where some of it happens in the TARDIS, and they use that weird quality sometimes that the TARDIS has. It's almost like a space for our dreams and nightmares, a stage on which all of those monsters and gods can play out their dramas, and we can watch, we can take part, and we can be terrified, and we can laugh tears of joy. It's the stage for everything, and what a wonderful stage it is.
Yes, I think I agree with that. I like when they play with the TARDIS a bit, like in what's the Matt Smith one? Is it Amy's Choice?
I can't think.
And it sort of gets relit, and
with the
nightmare,
the dream, dream guy,
Lord. And
Dream Lord. That's him.
In Flux, when the door stops growing out of the floor, and then it's got the cracks. And do you know,
very weird.
Maybe I'll message out, but I was thinking the other day, what would be really cool is a TARDIS figure with the model with the cracks in it, and a little light inside, so they could glow. Maybe I'll put that to him.
It's great. I think someone mentioned Invasion of Time earlier in the comments, and that was a story where a lot of it happened in the TARDIS by necessity because it was just cheap, but they filmed it in a sort of abandoned hospital building that was about to get demolished, and it's weird because we'd gone from a TARDIS that had all sort of gleaming roundels and white stuff and what have you, and it suddenly had like fire escape type iron stairs and brick walls and weird alcoves. I love that, and people at the time saying, "Oh, why was it doing that?" But as a kid, I loved the idea of it.
The Sontaran runs across stacks
there's a sort
of sun lounger,
trips over the chair, a sun lounger. That's it. The swimming pool.
It's left in there. They didn't retake it. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's the Zero Room in Castrovalva. There's the Cloister Room in Legopolis. Chris Bidmead was someone who seemed to enjoy bringing the TARDIS into his stories. And I think actually all three of them did that in different ways, or ways that we'd never seen before. As I said, the Zero Room in Castrovalva, the Cloister Room, that decaying, crumbling sort of columns and covered in sort of withered ivy and stuff like that. And also in Frontius, which we released quite recently with Jonathan Wilkins, the taking apart of it, the fact of being exploded outwards and embedded into the rock of this planet, which again gave it a whole different kind of vibe. And I love the TARDIS. It's a lot of fun.
That's got me thinking about something. Right. Oh. Yes. So this has been
Jeff
great
thinking.
to
doesn't happen often. That
to take a look at things that we all love. So thank you everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it, and there's been a really big number of comments there, which is great.
Bigly number.
So if you're new to us, please do stick around. We hope you will, and we will be back soon. We've got a couple of things that we're working on, haven't we? That we hope to get out soon. So yeah,
we will get out. We don't hope. We will. Be positive, Jeff.
Yes, keep your eyes on our socials, and we'll catch you next time on Who Corners Corner. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you for listening. Bye for now. See you next time.